We are live. I think you can hear me, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I see all of my little meters say that my microphones are working. All right, everybody, welcome to the Pillow of the Month for May. I'm super excited to bring you this pillow. May and April are some of my favorite months because that's when everything springs back to life. It is also the season of Easter. And we all know that resurrection means new life. And so I'm wishing you a blessed resurrection day today if you are watching on Easter Sunday. If you're watching the replay, the same goes out to you. All right, everybody, let me go ahead and show you what we're working on today and what you need to get started. So first, I'm going to share my desktop and show you the handout. So it looks like this. The pillow of the month, or the May pillow of the month for you, is a 20-inch bench pillow. You're going to need 2 Jelly Roll strips of medium, green or dark green, so either one works for your leaves. You also need a 15 by 20 inch rectangle of background fabric for your pillow front. And then you need 2 pieces that are 15 by 12 of any coordinating fabric for the back of your pillow. And I'm going to show you how to make an overlapping pillow insert today. And so today we're going to be spending more time on actual pillow construction because that's what you guys asked me for. So you can see the 2 or 3 images I used. If you want to do your own kind of improvisational flowers using scraps, I've given you an image of something that you could do. This size is really nice for like up to 4 large flowers. So you could do some daisies or some other spring flowers. I put a couple of flower options for you, and I'm going to be doing the one in the little flower pot today. So let me just return back to my desktop over here so you can see my 2-camera view. You guys should be able to see my hands. All right, so for my fabric, I picked this kind of blue, a little bit iridescent, that has like a tonal weave to it by Michael Miller. I really like this. Oh, no, this is for Bernitex. It's a sorry, and it's not a Michael Miller. But I like how this looks. If you notice, it has a little bit of a sheen, so it kind of sparkles a little bit, and it's a baby blue and a cream. Okay, so I took mine images, and I went ahead and I traced, just like we always do. I went ahead and traced my flowers in their entirety like this onto, if you notice that I just laid that on there, and I put the paper just like I've done before. I'm not going to show you that because I've shown you this so many times, so I'm not going to this time. But I just took and I made my own flowers, and this has fusible on the back. And so I used Pellon 805. So if you have Pellon 805, you can do it that way. Otherwise, you can do needle turn or another method of your choice. For the little pots, I decided to not have these little indentations, and I just traced my pots like this. So I just took and I rounded this corner, and I made my pots a little bit kind of more stylistic like this because I didn't want that little edge. But if you want that little edge, you can cut them out that way, or you can have yours just straight. And so let me show you what I did, because today I'm going to focus on the construction of the actual pillow. All right, so let me move that to the side. So first, let me tell you what I did. Ta-da! I took, and you're going to see my wonky quilting. So I took my flowers and I traced them all on fusible interfacing, a fusible web, and then I put them all on here. These are just fusible web only, Pellon 805. There's no interfacing, but there is interfacing underneath these pots. And the reason I did that is because I wanted them to have a little bit of dimension. Then once I fused them all down, I took them over to my sewing machine and I layered it with a polyester batting. I'm going to show you what it is. It's TP970 Thermolam Plus, and I like this because it's thin. See how ultra thin it is? But it also doesn't shrink like cotton does, and so I can do some texturing on my pillow. And this is great for bags, and it's also great for small placemats and other things that you're going to be washing a lot. All right, so let's look at what we've got. So the first thing that I did is I wanted to see kind of a cloudy effect. So what I did is once I layered this, and I left this like this so you can see it, I layered that with my Pellon. I made it bigger than what I wanted, and then I went over to the sewing machine and I started in the middle. And so I stitched around the pot and I came up the stem, and then I went around these flowers. And I did that for all of the flowers. And then I kind of came from one side and I did like a ripple effect with my sewing machine over, and a ripple effect the other way, and a ripple effect the other way. The reason I did that opposite directions is so that as I wash this, it's going to create like a pillowy, kind of like a cloud effect, which is what I was going for. Now, if I wanted to get rid of some of this, I could just steam it. So I could steam it and see what it's going to look like. So if I want to see what it's going to be, I can just give it a little spritz of water, pat it down, and this is what it looks like once you wash it. You get that little bit of crinkle to it, and I really like how that looks. I'm just going to kind of pat it down with my hot iron, and so it's going to have that effect that looks like a cloud. Now, if you don't like that, you could do something else. You could just draw grid lines, and you could use your walking foot, but this is what I wanted mine to look like. At the bottom, I added a little bit of green for the ground. And so this is a 2.5-inch strip of green at the bottom, and that's just the ground, so that my pots weren't floating up in the air. And then I made my pots, and this is what I'm finished with. Now that I've finished the entire thing, I just trimmed it to size so that my batting is now even with this part. And if I want to come in, I can do some additional sewing, and let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, and if you have a sewing machine, a regular one, you don't need any special feet to sew, but you do need to be able to drop your feed dogs if necessary. So let me turn this off so that you can get a better look. So on my sewing machine, I'm going to do some waves down here at the bottom on my little grassy knoll I have here. And I just use the same color thread for all of my quilting. And I increase my stitch length to 3.0 instead of 2.5. I'm going to pull my thread and hold the tail, and then I'm going to drop my feed dogs. So my feed dogs are down, and I'm going to take both of my hands and I'm going to hold this tail like this, and I'm going to start kind of stitching in place, and then I'm going to wave this around like this. And on this particular one, let me just kind of pull this out, and it's going to go like this. It's a little bit too thick on this machine. But I'm just going to take my hands and make those waves because that's how I did the top part. So I'm just waving it around, nothing fancy. And that's also how I got those crinkles that I wanted. I'm going to come to the opposite direction, and I can sew off the edge if I want to because that's going to be hidden in the seams. And then I can come over here to this section, and I can sew in this opposite direction, and I'm just going to kind of make these little wrinkly waves, and I'm going to follow the edges of these. I just left this bottom section undone so you could see how I did all my waves on this top. And like I said, I left all of the excess batting until I got ready to trim it to the correct size. And then there we go. And I'm just making little kind of wavy lines. I'm going to follow that leaf. And I'm going to come out here. And I'm just going to kind of follow it around. If you sew in opposite directions, you get more crinkles. If you sew matchsticks or close lines together in the same direction, you get less of a wave when you're sewing. So it depends on whether or not you want a lot of crinkles or not. If you wash your pre-wash your fabric, you get less crinkling, but if you don't pre-wash your fabric, you get more crinkles. Sorry, friends. And this is how I followed all of my lines around. Ooh, allergy season really has me going. And I took allergy medicine today too. All right, so now that you see that, you can see where I have all of my little crinkles, and that's how I made my lines on this particular backing. So once I got all my little lines that I wanted crinkled in there, then all I did was trim this entire thing to size, and now I'm ready to turn this into a pillow. Did anybody have any questions about the quilting part, or do you want me to do a separate video on the quilting part? And like I said, I wanted this to be wavy, and if you want to get rid of, once you do that, if you notice, all of my waves are coming out because I'm pressing it with the iron. So I'm just going to give it a hot press once I'm done sewing it, and that just kind of shows me if I need to come in here and do any more sewing on any of these parts. But I just use my presser foot, regular foot. This is cotton quilting thread, nothing fancy. 100% cotton quilting thread, and there I have my waves that I wanted. Let me come over here to this side, heating up my iron. I'm going to add a little bit of steam. And as you quilt pieces like this, especially small pieces, they will pucker on you, and so then you press them to get them nice and flat, to get them where you want. All right, friends, I hope you had a wonderful Resurrection Sunday with your family. We celebrated early because my firstborn is actually cruising somewhere, so she's probably on her way to the Caribbean somewhere. All right. And look at that. So that gives me the texture that I want. You see that? And it gives me the waves. It makes it look like the sky. And so now I'm ready for the next part. All right, for the next part, I'm going to need 2 pieces of fabric for the back. And so what I did is I cut them from the selvage edge. So this is the selvage, right? And this is the inside. And I folded them to put them away, but I'm just going to give them a good hard starch. If you want to put interfacing on your back, you can put interfacing on your back, but it's not necessary. Whenever I do sew a quilt top or add a backing to a pillow, I like to press it really hard with some steam and get all of those yucky wrinkles out before you quilt anything. So your backing should be wrinkle-free and pucker-free. Some people even like to starch their backing. It's not necessary because this is going to be unquilted. All right. So this is from the selvage edge. I'm just going to fold it. Did I pre-wash my fabric? Yes, I did. I tend to pre-wash most of my fabric just because I like how it looks. Now, because this is going to be a pillow edge, I am going to leave the selvage on there. Normally, if it's a quilt back and I'm sewing a seam down the center, I sew a great big 1/2-inch seam and then I remove the selvage. But for a pillow, that selvage gives me extra kind of stiffness, so I'm going to leave that in there. All right, so I'm going to bring that in about a 1/2 inch. And then what I'm going to do to this is I'm going to add a little bit of interfacing to that edge, and that keeps my edges of my pillow. So right inside here, I'm going to add a little bit of interfacing. Let me just cut vertically. And I'm just going to cut a piece of interfacing. Now this is a lot easier if you're doing it with a rotary cutter. But I'm just cutting a little tiny sliver of interfacing. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to put that inside that seam. And that'll give that seam some stiffness because I want to be able to take that pillow form and take it in and out, in and out, in and out. And that edge can get distorted or stretchy on me. And so now I'm just going to take and I'm going to lay that little bit of interfacing on the inside where that selvage is, like this. I'm going to fold it under. I'm going to add a little bit of steam, a little bit of water, 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to press it, just like this. And what that'll do is that'll give it some stiffness. Now that I have that in there, I'm going to give it one more fold like this. And so I'm doing a double fold with a little bit of interfacing. And what that'll do is it'll give it a nice stiff edge on the inside. And so you're not going to see that selvage, and that selvage won't pucker on you like this. And so I'm going to just lay that iron. And what that'll do is that'll keep that inside edge from stretching. Now I'm going to bring this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew that. And so I'm going to pin it in a couple of places just to hold it. Just like this. Doesn't have to be fancy, but it's about a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to sew on this side along one edge. I'm going to come over and I'm going to sew on the other. So I'm going to have 2 seams, one going one way, I'm going to come across, and then another way. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. This fabric has been pre-washed. I wash 99% of the fabric that I get just to remove all of the manufacturing chemicals. I don't know what it is inside fabric, whatever sizing or things they put inside there. A lot of times will make me sneeze when I press if I don't pre-wash my fabrics. I don't know if anybody else is sensitive like that. All right, so now I have this. Same thing, I'm going to fold it under. Bring it all the way across. I'm going to add a little tiny bit of interfacing to that as well. A little sliver, like a 1/2 inch, it's not much. And it's just to make it stiff and to trap that interfacing inside that edge. Like I said, you can do this with a rotary cutter, but you don't have to. You just make a little tiny strip to stick in there, just like that. Just as long as it's trapped inside those layers, you're good. Don't get that on your iron. It's trapped all the way over. And then you're bringing that all the way over. I'm going to pin it in a couple of places, and then it's ready to go. A little bit of interface sticking out. I'm going to pull it off of there so I don't get it on my iron. All right, so now I'm going to take this to the machine, and I'm going to sew down one side, come around the other side. Okay? So I have 2 sides now for my pillow back. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going over to the machine. All right, on my machine, I have a 3.0 stitch length. I don't have a really small one like when I'm piecing. Let me fix my feed dogs. And I'm just going to come on one side. I'm going to start. Always hold your little tails to your threads so you don't get tangles. As a new quilter, that was one of the things that I didn't do, and I used to get bird's nests when I was sewing, and I didn't know why, but I learned to hold my tail threads. All right, so I'm going to come along this edge on one side, push that over nice and stiff. I'm going to bring it to the corner. I'm going to come this way. And then I'm going to sew on the other side just because I don't want that to ever lift up on me. And I'm just going to come right along that edge. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to backtrack over here. And I'm going to sew my next piece. Same thing, 3.0 stitch length and not a real tiny one like a quilter's piecing. So when I'm piecing, I use a 2.0 or a 1.9. When I'm sewing a pillow together, I use a 3.0. This machine is very fast, so you kind of got to watch it with this machine. All right, same thing I did before. I'm going to come to the end. And then I'm going to flip this around. You don't even need to cut your threads. You just keep going. And I'm sewing both of the edges down like this. Just hold it nice and straight. And I've got the back edges to my pillow. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to trim those threads and leave them there. All right, so let me show you what I've got now. Okay. Oh, Vicki said you're going to use your flower from the gnome? Absolutely. If you go into the gnome of the month, there's a bunch of alternate pieces you could use, and you could make these into pillows. All right, so now that I have this, I have this nice edge now. If you look at it, it has sewing on two sides. And if you measure it, it's about a 1/2 inch. Just going to give it a press. And now I'm going to lay these. So here's my pillow. All right. I'm going to sew this really quick on this side, but here's my pillow. And I'm going to lay this pretty sides together with the raw edge on this side of my pillow, the raw edge over here, the finished side on this side, and then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So they are pretty sides to pretty sides. And now I have this big deep welt. Now this one's a little bit too deep, so I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to pull this. I want this overlap in the middle to be about 8 inches. And so now I know that there's way too much fabric because I made them bigger than what I needed, because I'd rather have too much fabric than not enough. So if you notice, here's my pillow, and then I have this right here that overlaps about 8 inches. So now that I have that, I can pin this in place just like this, and I can use my pins or my clips for this because this is where I want it to be when I sew. All right, to sew this, super easy. I'm going to sew about a 1/2 inch away. I don't leave any openings. I'm going to sew all the way around. This excess I'm going to cut off, but I'm just going to sew all the way around and leave no opening because the opening is in the middle. Let me move this over here. And so everywhere you see pins, you sew. You sew all the way around. And then when you're done, you're going to trim this excess piece right here. Just going to make sure that they're nice and straight. And what that'll do is that'll prevent that pillow back from opening when you stuff the pillow in there. And so make sure these edges are even and that you're using a 1/2 inch seam. You're not using a little 1/4 inch seam because you're not quilting, you're making a pillow cover, and that'll ensure that you have a nice thick seam. And so I just pin it all the way around. There we go. Let me move all this scrap out of the way. Just like that. And I'm going to sew it all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that now so you can see. But I'm going to add a few more pins before I go over to the machine. I'm just going to line these up. I don't like for all of my pieces to shift on me. I'm using a 9014 needle for those of you who are wondering, because I'm sewing through a lot of layers. Look at how many layers I have here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. And so I want to be able to sew all of those layers nice and neat. And so I'm definitely using a 9014 top stitch needle. Make sure that these flaps back here are straight. and you're going to pin the heck out of this. And that's an official quilting term, please. We don't say naughty words on the Jelly Roll Club, but you're going to pin it like crazy. So for the non-profane quilter, we use that terminology. And so I'm just going to sew it just like this. And then I'm going to sew, pull it all the way up, all the way around a 1/2 inch seam. This works great if you have like a Formica table or a wood table because this slips around easier. I like a slippery surface whenever I'm pinning. And then any extra fabric that I don't need, I'm going to go ahead and trim off. I can take my scissors. If you have a serger, this would be a great time to serge your pillow all the way around, all of these raw edges if you wanted to serge them. Or if you have a machine that zigzags, you can zigzag the part that's to the right of the stitch line. All right. I'm going to make my stitch length for this particular part 2.5 or 2.7. Either one works fine. But I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and where I had a 3.0 before for top stitching, now I'm going to reduce that. And I'm going to start right here where this overlaps. You can see that. That's the overlap. I'm going to start right there. And I'm sewing a 1/2 inch seam, so I'm going to pull that pin. And on my bed of my machine, it has the 1/2 inch line, which is on the other side of the 1/4 inch seam line. So I'm just going to keep that at a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to hold those threads, and then I'm going to backstitch because I want that to be nice and strong. And I'm just going to go about a 1/2 inch all the way around. When you're sewing this much fabric, it's important to kind of put a little bit of downward pressure with both of your hands like this and hold that stuff straight and take your time. Some machines do not like to sew through this much fabric, so you really have to kind of slow down. And then when I come to my corner, I'm going to pause right there and pivot, never lifting my machine, never lifting my piece, just to pivot. And then I'm going to sew just like that with the needle down. I'm going to come here to the bottom. Always check that none of your layers have shifted, because when you're sewing this many layers, they can shift, and this is why I put so many pins. This is literally pinned and pinned and pinned again. So don't stab yourself with all those pins, and just keep all of those edges nice and straight. These edges are off kilter just a smidge, so I'm going to move that to the side. And I'm going to get that back on grain and back to straight again. Like I said, when you're sewing this much, you're going to want to take your time. If you go too fast when you're sewing this, and my machine is a semi-industrial, so this is like a Brother PQ 1500, and this machine is designed to sew through lots of layers of denim. It's like a semi-industrial. So I can do stuff on this machine that maybe some of your smaller domestic machines cannot do. So just be aware of that when you see me zipping around with this machine. This is a heavy-duty machine. All right, so this is coming around. And we're going to get over here to where we started. I'm going to pivot this corner just like this. Again, I'm going to pull a few pins and make sure all of my stuff is nice and straight. I probably used about 30 pins, and that's okay. And then I'm going to overlap where I started. I'm going to go past that area, and then I'm going to just back tack just a hair and back tack again, and now I can cut it. All right, so let me show you how I finish this. All right, so now you should be able to see that. I have these corners here that I need to nip at a diagonal like this. And that's just to reduce the bulk. So I'm cutting them at like a 45-degree angle. When I'm working by myself in my sewing room and I'm not live streaming, I tend to be a lot more of a perfectionist. And you're just going to take this and you're going to stick your hand in there. And you're going to flip all of that over. And so your pillow doesn't need a zipper. You can take it off of your pillow insert and wash it as much as you need to. And then you're going to take a chopstick and you're going to push those corners out like this. That'll give you some nice, look at those nice corners. And just pull that out. I don't use a seam ripper here. So I've seen some people use a seam ripper to pull those corners out. That can be a little bit dangerous. You can always thread some embroidery floss through there and push it out. But the easiest for me is literally just pull it with a pin and then use a chopstick in the corner like that. And I get those nice sharp corners. Do the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to stick my hand in there. Poke it through as much as you can with your finger. Hold it between your thumbs. Kind of roll it around and then push with your chopstick. And that gives you a nice clean corner every time. But you got to get rid of that bulk. If you don't get rid of the bulk, it's over. All right. Now I have it. So now I have this little insert where I'm going to be able to stick my pillow. And look at this. This is what I wanted. So now this is a self-binding pillow, and because the back is the same material as the front, then I don't need any extra binding. I don't need anything. My pillow is done. Oh, somebody said, Kathleen said, don't forget to make the waves on the other side. Don't worry, Kathleen. See these little waves that are missing? After I get off of here, I'm going to unpick this section. I'm going to finish those waves and then sew it back together. So don't you worry. I've already thought about that. I was like, I need my waves on this side. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4 waves. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to unpick this side, make my waves, and stitch it back together. So if you ever forget to do that, that's what you're going to do. My pillow is ready now for its insert. And I don't need a zipper. I don't need buttons. And then when I stick my pillow in there, I'm just going to pull it open like this. I'm going to stuff my pillow in there, and then those flaps will close, and you will have a nice, neat pillow back, and the insert will not be showing. And that, my friends, is how we're making the May Pillow of the Month. I made some of these stems a little bit taller than what were in the handout, and I made some of them shorter just to give my flowers a little bit of variety, but I like how it looks. This pillow finishes 14 inches tall by 20 inches wide. If your pillow insert, some of them are only 12 inches, then this should be able to fit in your pillow insert. And I made it to fit a variety of inserts. So if your pillow insert is 12, some of them are like 12 by 20, you can still chop off this section and it'll still fit within that design. So I made this so that it was flexible for different size bench pillows. If you want to make it longer, you can make it longer as well. You just add one of these, and I spaced these out so that they were basically the width of a jelly roll strip, because I made these with jelly roll strips. And then I added about 1 inch in between the little pots. So if you want to know how much space there is, there's 1 inch between the pots, And then my pots themselves are about a jelly roll width apart if you want to mark your pillow. But there it is, friends. Like I said, if you have one of those shorty pillow inserts, it's only 12 inches. It would look like this instead of my wide one because I made my own insert. So you decide how you want yours to look. So this is for a 12. This one is 14. I may put a little bumblebee up here, like hand stitch or even some buttons, but I like how this turned out. All right, everybody, that is the end of the pillow of the month. Ta-da! This is what it's going to look like. And now I'm going to show you a quick preview of what we're going to do next Sunday because I am starting a brand new quilt. So you're going to be seeing that in 2 weeks. I'm going to go back to my Fruits of the Spirit to finish the four corners and the embellishments. But next week, we're going to start a brand new quilt. So let me share my desktop so you can see. And it is called Hip to Be Square. So this is the project that we're going to be working on. You need 3.5 yards of background for that. My suggestions are cream or light gray. And then 80 strips. If your jelly roll has only one of each color, you're going to need 2 full jelly rolls. I'm going to use 80 strips. And this is a big quilt. It's almost 90 by 90, so it'll fit a queen. And if you add a nice border, you might even be able to fit a king. So let me show you the colors that I'm using. So let me grab these. For mine, I picked up Kona Sunroom Coordinates. Let me show you what this looks like. I was trying to decide which to use. So I had this one. So I decided on this Kona Sunroom Coordinates just because it has a full spectrum. And I got these on sale. They were only $25 each. So they're called Sunroom Coordinates, and they look like this. So this is what I'm using. I picked this particular jelly roll because there is 2 of each color. So there's like 2 hot pink and 2 fuchsia. Let me show you my other camera just so you can see. So there's like 2 corals, 2 of this peach color, 2 of this goldenrod, mustard, 2 of this green. And the reason I did that is because that gives me 4 of each color, and so I have plenty to choose from. I'm going to have some left over when I do this particular quilt. So next Sunday, we're going to start with Hip to Be Square for those of you who wanted another jelly roll project, and we're going to continue with our Pillow of the Month series. I think it's going to be fun, and I've got a couple more quilts up my sleeve, so I will see you guys next week for another version of the Jelly Roll Club. I hope you guys like this. Give me a thumbs up. Tell me what else you want to see. I had lots of people who said, show me how to make a pillow the way you do it, without a zipper, without any binding, and this is how I make my pillow. Jack is coming out so that I can put waves on one side of my pillow. And that's it. I hope you have a wonderful Resurrection Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you next Sunday for Hip to Be Square. All right, everybody? I'll see you guys later. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate your support. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. That way you never miss anything that I share. All of my stuff is free, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.